All right, today I will be talking about the top 7 head coaches in football. Worth noting, what I am not going to be doing here is I am not talking about historic success. I'm talking about today. If I could have one head coach to head coach my team for next season and next season only, which guy would I take? That is the way that I'm going to view this. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with number 7. Number 7, give me John Harbaugh. I'm going to have some numbers to the side of me because, that's fun. These are historic numbers, of course, but, a way we can predict next year would be by looking at the past. It's not always going to be perfect, but we'll get into that in a second. Regular season numbers, very good. Wins over 60% of his games. Playoffs, you do see a bit of a dip in terms of his win-loss record, but that's to be expected, really. Like, you expect the numbers to get a little bit worse in the postseason just because you're playing better teams. So, you're, above 500 win percentage is really good in the playoffs, quite frankly. One Super Bowl and one conference win is what I'm going to refer to that as. That means a conference championship win. So, also known as Super Bowl appearances. I just couldn't figure out the best way to format that. But yeah, with John Harbaugh, I mean, he's a really good coach. Like, he's someone who, it's always kind of weird because I don't know how much he has to do with the X's and O's of his teams, but his X's and O's tend to be pretty good. I know you could argue about the offensive play calling at times, but I kind of think that, if you don't have a great receiving core, the offensive play calling always looks worse. So that's typically how it works. So because of that, I think that's part of why, some of that has some concerns. Defensive play calling has also, again, it's had its issues at times, which hasn't, but for the most part has been very good as well, and they're mixing things up now, and we'll see how that goes. But the Ravens as a whole tend to be a very smart organization, always finds little advantages, and, John Harbaugh, I think, is certainly a part of that. The analytics stuff makes sense with him. You could debate going for 2 or not on those touchdowns left and right. The analytics I've seen for that say it's kind of a toss-up, so I'm kind of like, whatever he felt like was best. I'm not going to argue with it too much. Number 6, I have someone who many are going to be shocked is this low. Many might have him as number 1. Some people could have that. You can make the argument. I mean, listen, the numbers are good, right? Over a 6.33 win percentage in the regular season. Playoffs takes a bit of a dip here, kind of a sizable dip, even compared to some of these other guys. He's just barely above 500. So definitely a dip there, even more so than what you expect. And also the one Super Bowl. Now, you're going to see some with parentheses. That means he's won 2 Super Bowls. One was as an assistant. So 2 total Super Bowls, 1 as an assistant. So 3 conference wins. One of those, or 4 if you count when he was as an assistant. So that's how that works. My biggest doc about Andy Reid is I just feel like he's done a really poor job, quite frankly, of adjusting to this cover 2 defense that teams keep going against you. Like, that's not that difficult of a defense, I wouldn't think, but it's really been an issue for Andy Reid and this Chiefs team, kind of been a thorn in their side a little bit. So because of that, I do dock him a little bit. And when we're dealing with the best head coaches, that's what I'm doing. There's the obvious issues of Andy Reid, the clock management stuff, the fact that, teams have underperformed in the postseason at times. All that stuff is, it happens. It's true. But again, the X's and O's he puts on the field are just so incredible. And he's, you could say, oh, well, he was only good with Mahomes, but he was good with Alex Smith. He's been good with a lot of people. So he's obviously amazing. Again, we're dealing with, these top 7 coaches, I think, are all fantastic. Number 5, we have the reigning Super Bowl champ, the guy who my podcast co-host Kyle put at number 1. I'm putting Sean McVay a little bit lower than number 1, but I still think he's very good. Number 5, I mean, again, the numbers, a 679 win percentage in the regular season, and gets better in the postseason. 7-3, has 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 win already in his young career. So this is very good. I still think there's some issues with Sean McVay's play calling sometimes. I still think there's been times I'm like, this is getting a bit predictable. Guys are jumping these routes, knowing what's happening, especially towards the end of the regular season these past couple of years. But then, maybe he was just making a plan because he didn't want to show stuff, knowing he would get into the playoffs. If that might be the case, it might not. If it is, I would probably move him up a couple spots, but it might not be. And again, sort of that, running the ball in the Super Bowl as much as he did, not sure if he had to do that. So there still are some nitpicks I have with him, but they're nitpicks. Again, you have to nitpick when you're separating these guys because they're all so good. And McVay certainly has the potential to continue to climb the ladder the more he's in the league. If he can, gets another Super Bowl with Matt Stafford, then he might jump up to number 1 for me. Number 4, I'm going with a guy who has never been to the Super Bowl, at least not as a head coach, did make it as an assistant under Sean McVay, actually. Regular season numbers are the best out of any head coach. A 796 win percentage in the regular season. That's absurdly good. Playoffs, not so much. 400 win percentage. 2-3, not great postseason numbers. Now, an element of that is you're always getting the bye week, right? So when you get the bye week, you don't get to take advantage of those wild card wins. So you could almost make the argument that he's really kind of like 5-3 because he's gotten the bye week, and so bye week is essentially a playoff win. So that's the case. But, the playoff concerns are probably the one thing that would dock him a little bit. But I think the way he schemes guys open is just incredible. I mean, their receiving core was Devontae Adams, and that's it. And he was still able to scheme guys open consistently. Part of that is Aaron Rodgers, of course. But Aaron Rodgers has had a huge jump in his career once LaFleur got there. The Packers have had a huge jump in their success once LaFleur got there. The win percentage is fantastic. I think the X's and O's are fantastic. I am a big Matt LaFleur guy, and I'm going to continue pounding the table. And I think that he will probably have a Super Bowl victory or two before it's all said and done. Number 3, give me a guy with a sub 500 record. Definitely someone who people are very, people have very different opinions on Kyle Shanahan. I believe, the stat is Matt Nagy has a higher win percentage than Kyle Shanahan. And listen, if you want to sit here and say, well, the point of a head coach is to win football games. He has lost more football games than he has won. He does not belong on this list. I can't really argue with that. What I would say is his X's and O's are fantastic. I mean, we all agree with that. The Shanahan scheme works. The way he can get this running game situation to work is fantastic. And the one stat that also jumps out at you is 4-2 in the postseason. So his system really works in the playoffs. And I think that if they had a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo, let's be honest, if they got Tom Brady, which they considered doing and didn't, do they win the last 2 Super Bowls? It's possible. They certainly won last year, I would think. Again, it's weird because if he's there, then the whole realm of the NFL changes. So who knows exactly? But the reality is, if they had good quarterback play last year, they might win the Super Bowl. 3 years ago, they might win the Super Bowl. They made it. He's gone to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship game with Jimmy Garoppolo. That alone deserves to put you on this list, I think. And the X's and O's are so great. I don't know enough about his leadership, but again, the win percentage stuff, to me, that's his win percentage with Nick Mullins wasn't spectacular. I'm not going to hold that against him too much. That's kind of how I view it. Yeah, with Hoyer the Destroyer, it didn't work out the way you wanted it to necessarily, but his win percentage with Garoppolo was great. So again, I think that get him a decent quarterback, get him a better quarterback than Garoppolo, things could work better, but even with Garoppolo, they've had plenty of success. That's why I have him at number 3. Number 2, I will be a Mike Tomlin stan until I die. That team had no business making the postseason last year. That team had no business picking anywhere outside the top 5 in the upcoming draft with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They still find a way to make the postseason. Mike Tomlin is a wizard and the second best coach in football, in my opinion. The regular season record, very good. Again, okay, it's not quite in the 700s like LaFleur's is, but that's partially because he's just been a coach for so much longer. 154, 85, and 2 is his record. Never had a losing season, of course, as we know. Although his playoff record, which is now a 17-game stretch, which would be, a season, is, 8-9. That's the concern, is he's sub 500 in the playoffs, and I think that is a fair criticism of Tomlin, and why he's probably not number 1 is because his teams have come up short in the playoffs at times. Again, I don't know how much of that is his fault, Ben Roethlisberger turning the ball over every drive against Jacksonville, or starting off, in the first quarter, turning the ball over every drive against Cleveland, 2 years ago, or just having to have Ben Roethlisberger as his team last year in the playoffs, a team that had no business being in the postseason in terms of the talent they had. All of that stuff, I think that I don't know how much to blame him for. Those are three losses right there, and it's I don't know if that's his fault necessarily. A lot of his playoff losses have come against the Patriots, and he's another guy who got a lot of bye weeks, getting the 2 seed, where it seemed like every year the Patriots would get the 1 seed, the Steelers would get the 2 seed, and then the Steelers would lose in the AFC Championship game to the Patriots. That's going to hurt his record, but it's not really his fault as much. the numbers are numbers, so it's a fair criticism, but I just don't know how much of it was his fault. Does have a Super Bowl win, technically 2, one as an assistant, and then again, 2 trips to the Super Bowl, technically 3 if you count him as an assistant. And finally, give me the GOAT. Give me Bill Belichick at number 1. The guy with a 670 win percentage, despite the fact that he's coached well over 400 games. That's insanity. If we're talking about who's had the best career out of any current guy, Belichick is clearly the guy. Not only that, his playoff win percentage somehow gets better in that stretch. 31-13, 6 Super Bowl wins, 8 if you count him as a coordinator, 9 conference championship wins, 11 if you count the 2 with the Giants. That's absolutely bonkers numbers. And if you want to sit here and say, oh, well, he had Tom Brady did it. Okay, then why didn't any other head coach come anywhere close to having the success that they had together? Because there's been quarterbacks who have had similar production to Brady, even if you want to say he's had the best production, which I would agree with. But it hasn't been that different than Aaron Rodgers. These, a year in, year out, Rodgers and Brady have pretty similar production, but Belichick is way more successful than even someone else who I have high on this list than Matt LaFleur. Belichick won 6 Super Bowls, and he won 2 without Brady. So, and just made the playoffs last year. I think that there's criticism of Belichick, right? And I think it's fair to dock him out of the number 1 spot if you want to. His refusal to pay attention to analytics and to pay attention to the way the game has changed, I think will probably be the end of him as a football coach, if he continues to do this. And I could see him falling off a little bit. I think that he believes in himself a lot with a lot of these draft picks. Sometimes it works out. The majority of the time it doesn't when he takes kind of one of these hot picks early on. So if that's the case, that would be concerning to me. And I think that the Cole Strange pick probably isn't going to work out. It might, but odds are it won't. So there are some valid criticisms with Belichick. But if we're just talking about him as a coach, I thought his team was really well coached last year. I thought the X's and O's were very good. Again, offensive play caller Matt Patricia starting next year. I don't know why Belichick loves Patricia so much, but listen, the guy has 6 Super Bowl rings. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I thought that he did a good job last year with a lot of the X's and O's. Again, there's criticisms to be had. Should they have opened up the offense a little more with Mac Jones? Perhaps. I get that. But I thought that he was still really good last year. And again, I'm going to put him at number 1 until it's clear to me that he shouldn't be. And it's not clear to me that he shouldn't be, so I'm going to keep him at number 1. So yeah, that's my list. Top 7 head coaches. Where am I wrong? Why am I stupid? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.